What's going on, guys? So before we hit the road in this brand new 2024 Lexus LX600 F-Sport Edition SUV with an 8,000 pound tow capacity, let me answer a couple questions and talk to you about a few things that I discovered. All right, so first of all, a lot of folks are going to ask, do we plan on towing the Forest River Surveyor, right? As it sits, it's about 6,200 pounds with a gross vehicle weight of over 7,000 pounds. But like I said, 6,200 pounds with a little over 650 pounds that transfer to the tongue of the truck or whatever you're towing it with. This truck with a 1,200 pound payload capacity and an 8,000 pound towing capacity shouldn't really have any issue towing the Surveyor. The problem is that I don't have a trailer brake controller for this, so the LX does not come equipped or even optioned with a trailer brake controller, which means I would have to add a system to the vehicle or use a wireless system, which I currently don't have. So the only reason why we're not going to be towing the Surveyor with this Lexus is because I don't have any way to actuate the trailer brakes, and that's kind of unfortunate. Something else that's kind of interesting about this vehicle, though, is the alarm system. So we found out a few things about what Lexus does to deter theft. So if you're inside of this vehicle, when the alarm goes off, there is an ultra loud piezo siren that goes off inside the vehicle. And it actually went off on my wife and daughter who were sitting inside of the vehicle when I ran into one of the stores. And they said it is ear-piercingly loud and it will absolutely kind of deter someone who's inside the vehicle from probably wanting to hang out too long. Did not know that Lexus started putting those inside of their vehicle. And trust me, I got an earful about that one. Another thing, out of just about every vehicle that I've ever reviewed that has the feature where you just kick your foot underneath the back to raise or lower the back liftgate, I'd have to say this one works flawlessly every single time. You simply swing your foot underneath it, and the gate opens up. Now, I know all of them should do that, but unfortunately, like my wife's Expedition, it struggles doing it sometimes, and most other vehicles that have had this feature, you kind of have to swing your foot under there about a half dozen times to get it to work. But this one, super functional. It works really well, and quite frankly, I think everyone else in the industry could probably learn a thing or two about making things that just work properly the first time. But that's a super cool feature. Anyways, we're going to take off in this. This is a beautiful SUV, but I'm dying to tell you about how it rides. So we are in the driver's seat of this 2024 Lexus LX600 F-Sport Edition SUV. You know, in the first video where I went over all the specs, the details, the exterior, the interior, all the things that I liked about it, some of the things that I thought they could have done a little different, I mentioned something subtly, and that's the fact that we've already been driving this around a little bit, and that it is absolutely one of the most comfortable vehicles I have ever driven. It is absolutely insane how comfortable this SUV is. I assume part of it is because of the four-way adaptable air suspension. You can raise this vehicle up super high, you can drop it super low, and you can put it in more of a normal mode as well. This is an incredibly off-road capable vehicle. And one thing that you will definitely notice when you drive vehicles that are designed to be incredibly off-road capable is they usually have a pretty comfortable ride. This is the cream of the cream when it comes to Lexus high-end SUVs. This is absolutely at the very top, and a lot of people get this vehicle not only because it is a super luxurious SUV loaded with tech and convenience features, but also because it is a super capable off-road vehicle. This is totally designed to be able to go to places that most vehicles probably can't go. It's got a center locking differential. It's got, again, the ability for you to raise or lower the height. It's got crawl control. It's got downhill assist. It's got all sorts of really crazy features designed to make this thing just absolutely insane when it comes to going off-road. Now, what a lot of people will say is, well, that just doesn't jive with Lexus. That's not what I've always heard of Lexus as, you know, being known for. Well, a lot of people know that Lexus is a division of Toyota, and Toyota has always had the Land Cruiser, which is, again, their top-of-the-line, kind of highest-end pinnacle of luxury mixed with off-road capability. And the LX600 is the Lexus more luxurious equivalent of the Toyota Land Cruiser. So a lot of reasons, again, why this vehicle is not just a luxury SUV, but it's also a luxury off-road SUV with a tremendous amount of capability. And right beneath this in the Lexus lineup is the GX series. And the GX is also known for its absolutely incredible off-road prowess. Now, we're not going to take this SUV off-roading because I actually signed something that said I wouldn't take it off-roading. That said, though, when you pay upwards of $108,000 to $110,000 for an SUV, there's a lot that you want. And what I can definitely say is you get the comfort, you get that smoothness. I said, why do off-road vehicles typically have really plush rides? Well, part of that is because they want you to be able to traverse really rough conditions in relative comfort, right? You want to be able to go over things and have that spring absorption, that shock absorption whenever you're going over big bumps, big crevices, big areas that might normally tax the suspension of other vehicles. You want these vehicles to be able to withstand that relatively easily. And whenever you look at something like a Ford Raptor, very smooth, very plush ride. Whenever you look at something like a TRX, again, very smooth, very plush ride, because you not only have that softer suspension that's more compliant for going off-road, but you also have increased travel as well. You want the suspension to articulate and move in a way that gives you really good maneuverability whenever you're going over big bumps and in big dips. Now, from an acceleration perspective, again, you see the LX600 designation, and you might think there's some huge V8 under the hood. They used to put a big V8 under the hood. They don't anymore. Lexus, as with Toyota and everybody else, has tried to get the most out of smaller platforms. But in the case of Lexus, they're getting you over 400 horsepower and almost 500 pound-feet of torque out of a 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6. And again, it's hard for someone to question the reliability from a brand that's known for reliability. There's a lot of folks out there who will say, well, I don't know if I trust it because it's a V6, twin turbo, lots of stuff could potentially fail, very technically engineered engine, a lot of things, again, that could potentially go wrong. But Lexus is a brand that you really can't say that about because their entire kind of branding is the fact that you get this type of luxury, this type of performance, but an insane amount of reliability. And that's kind of the key. If you haven't researched the Lexus brand, it's worth kind of looking back and seeing what it's all about, because they've built some of the most reliable vehicles ever made. I believe the first LS was one of the most reliable vehicles ever produced on the road, and it won awards like 10 years in a row for long-term dependability. And that same type of long-term dependability has always been a staple when it comes to the vehicles Lexus produces. And you can say the same thing similarly about Toyota, right? I don't think there's anybody who would say Toyotas are unreliable vehicles. They've always been kind of at that pinnacle of reliability. Shoot, even if you buy other Toyota products, most of the time you buy them because of their reliability, and you buy them because you typically know you're not going to have a ton of problems. The Tundra was a great example of that when they came out with their last version of the Tundra, where a lot of people were like, I don't know if it's going to stand up. I don't know if it can, really take on the domestic big three. But year and year and year again, it keeps winning awards for being one of the most reliable vehicles that you can buy. And there's a lot to be said about that. One thing Lexus does really well is they surround you with technology that is pertinent to what you're trying to do. They have touch screens, they have big displays, they have all sorts of really cool tech, but at the same time, they know where to stop using that tech. Like for your air conditioning controls, they're manual. They're controls that you have buttons. You can change a lot of the settings on the screen, but for the most part, they're all buttons and knobs. Same with your radio. You turn the power on with a button, you turn the power off with a button, and you have a knob to raise or lower the volume, which again are just convenience things. Lexus knows who their audience is, and they also understand that a lot of times when you buy a Lexus, you want the tech, you want the luxurious features and capability, but you also want the convenience, and you want a lot of ergonomics that are designed specifically around someone who wants a vehicle that's easy to operate. Of course, this vehicle is going to have all your normal convenience features, lane mitigation, blind spot assist, all of that stuff. But what's kind of interesting is on this vehicle, for instance, they throw in things like paddle shifting, right? On a luxury SUV, you get paddle shifting. You have some other kind of race-inspired features that kind of came from the LF, as far as like the digital heads-up display, your digital gauge cluster, as well as your infotainment system. From an acceleration braking perspective, very responsive. But the thing that kind of, again, stands out about this vehicle more than anything else is truly the fact that it has such a smooth, compliant ride. And again, the acceleration on this thing is no joke. it really accelerates well. I believe it's like a little under 7 seconds in terms of actual 0 to 60, which doesn't seem that fast by today's standards, especially if you're comparing this against like a TRX or even a Raptor R. But it feels more than enough to get this thing moving. It does not feel as if it's a slouch at all. The other thing that's really nice about this is the way it handles bumps or expansion joints. It just soaks them up. It feels super dampened. And when I say that, it feels as if you hit it, you feel the suspension react to it, but then all of a sudden it just goes away. It's a weird feeling. It almost feels like you're hitting memory foam. And again, that's just a testament to how they build these things. I know you think of air suspension, and a lot of people would be like, well, there's another brand of luxury SUV that builds a lot of them with air suspension, and you know, a lot of them end up getting to the dealership in crawl mode because that suspension system fails. Well, Lexus has been doing air suspension for a long time. I had an LS430 back in the day that had air suspension on it, and that vehicle is 12 years old by now, maybe 13 years old. And it was a absolutely super reliable vehicle. That was actually one of the vehicles I was talking about earlier that Lexus produced that constantly won awards for being one of the most reliable vehicles ever built. So again, as much as it's easy to kind of say the more tech you throw in, the more likelihood something's going to fail, the more, you know, the more features you have, the more complex they make things, the more likely it's going to fail. Lexus somehow produces vehicles that just don't fail very often. Just very reliable. And again, I'm just in awe at how comfortable this vehicle is. It's interesting because next week I won't have this vehicle. They're picking it up this week. But next week I have a road trip that's going to be about 600 miles long. It's a pretty long road trip. And I really wish that I was driving this over my GMC Denali because it's that much more comfortable. I don't have to put a pad above the seat. The seats are absolutely insanely comfortable. They don't have massaging features, which I do think that Lexus should put in this status of vehicle. You're paying over $100,000 for an SUV. I do think that that would be a great feature to kind of keep up with the competition in a way and put massaging seats in here because they're not in this vehicle, and I don't believe they're an option. They may be, but I don't believe they're an option considering this thing is completely loaded out as a 2024 model and it's an LX, which is the highest end SUV they make, and they don't have it. But aside from that, I only have good things to say about it, honestly. There's not a lot of bad things I could say about this vehicle from a driving perspective. I really, really enjoy it. If anything, turn the entire front gauge cluster into a screen versus kind of flanking it with the analog gauges. But aside from that, you know, this thing is just great. The light output is phenomenal at night. Super, super great headlights. Yeah, really like the vehicle. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed the review. I'm visiting a place you guys haven't seen in a while on my channel, and this is where we used to keep our RV. I'm actually meeting a buddy over here because we may have some projects for his RV. So a lot of cool stuff coming up. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.